Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So today we will present about bone transplant in scientific and Islamic perspective. So firstly, for introduction, bone implant exists to sustain and increase the quality of human life. Bone implant has been existed in Muslim healthcare system thousand years ago, and the materials to replace the bone has been an issue in medical field. So, for example, nickel titanium or NITI, commonly used in bones joints. However, a procedure on how to stop the toxicity of NITI must be made so that it can be safe to use in human body. So brief history of bone transplant in Western world. The first surgery happened in mid-1950 and the first successful surgery in 1968. In Islamic world, Ibn Sina said in his book that bone surgery is a hazardous operation that he would never attempt to perform, and bone transplant has been done 1,000 years ago, recorded by Muslim scholars.
Moving on to methods and procedure in bone transplant, there are 5 types of bone transplant. The first one is autograft. The cells are derived from the patients. Second one is allograft, where it derived from the other human body. Third is xenograft, which is derived from the animal tissue. Fourth is the use of synthetic bone substitutes, usually earth materials such as nickel titanium. And fifth is the use of products of bone regenerative medicines, which is by using the regenerative cell. So these are the two main medical procedure for bone marrow transplants, which is autologous and allogenics. And these are the brief medical procedure of bone transplants. First, they will go through comprehensive examinations by the doctors, and then they'll go through a screening process. We call it a conditioning to decide either the patient go to autologous or allogenic. And then these are the process that they'll be going through, and then they'll go to engraftment, where the blood cells will go through the central venous catcher inside the patient's body, and that's where it will develop.
So for the Western view, mostly Western people accept any kind of transplant, but Judaism reject a use of pig bone, but other transplant related to pig is acceptable. While for Hinduism, they reject bovine medical and surgical implant, but they also have no record of opposing bovine tissue implant. So this is the latest issue regarding bone transplant at New York University Langone. In Islamic perspective, Islam accept bone transplant and donation even though it is not stated in Holy Quran and Hadith. So there are several conditions, which are the first one is organ transplant must have the consent from the donor. And the second one, if the donor dies, permission must be obtained from his or her heirs. Then the last one is it must not involve any buying or selling organ. So according to Holy Quran, the vital organ such as heart are not allowed to be transplanted. Then this bone transplant method meets one of maqasid Sharia, which is the preservation of human life. Then the last one is, however, the use of bovine materials such as pig are rejected in Islam, but it only can be allowed when there are no other method that can be used, which is darurat.
So to summarize, bone transplantation is necessary to be implemented since it is required to preserve life, and it also satisfy one of the maqasid Sharia, which is the protection of life, where it is also permissible to do bone transplantation, especially the one that derive from the human body, as well as from the other donors, as long as the patient and the competent donors must both provide their unambiguous agreements, because this is in accordance with the basic standards for organ donation outlined in Islam, which states that when faced with two evils, the lesser of the two takes precedence, which is saving lives. But however, there are slight difference between Islamic and Western views in xenotransplantation, which is bone transplants from animal tissue, which is pig specifically. So the Westerners, without religion and a small percentage of the Christians, embrace the concepts of xenotransplantations with the approval from their priests. However, we as a Muslim reject the notions of xenotransplantations and transplant between human and animal, because we believe it is controversial, which is shubha, especially if it is from pig tissue. With that, I end our presentation. Thank you very much for your time and concentration.